Sean, can you hear me, mate?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, sweet. There we are. Right. Can you see me okay? Am I like, is my head being cut off?
Yeah, I can see you, yeah.
Good. Okay, guys, so we're going to wait just a few moments because people will probably turn up late. So, yeah, we're just going to wait a few minutes before we get started. So while we're waiting, if you want to just feel your feet on the ground or feel your bum on the chair, and just notice the sensations at the soles of your feet. Notice the sensations of your bum on the chair. Noticing that gravity is pulling you down towards the center of the earth. So we'll wait until about 7:05 before we get properly started. But yeah, for now, I'll just guide you on it in a little bit of mindfulness, really. So can you feel your feet on the ground? Can you feel your bum on the chair? Can you feel your hands? Often, if we have anxiety, all of our attention isn't in the body. All of our attention is in the mind. All of our attention is following these thoughts, these worrying, anxious thoughts. So when we simply redirect our attention, when we feel our feet on the ground, when we feel our bum on the chair, when we feel the sense of inner energy within our hands, when we feel the aliveness of our body, whatever we can feel in our body, if we place our attention there, we withdraw attention away from the worrying, thinking mind. That can relax us because it's attention which fuels the worrying, thinking mind. And so by taking attention away from it and placing it in the body, placing it in the hands, the feet, we're giving it less fuel and it can settle down just a little bit. So we'll wait 2 more minutes before we get properly started. So we've changed it up a bit. So this is a webinar Zoom setup. So everybody's muted when they come in, and we can't see you, but you can see us, hopefully. And yeah, we've disabled the chat, but you can ask questions in the Q&A box at the bottom. And towards the end of the meeting, we're going to be answering these questions. It's going to be about half an hour for us to answer your questions. There's already one question come in: how to treat depersonalization. So we'll talk about that later. I actually used to suffer from depersonalization in quite an intense way. So we will be speaking about that, if not at the end of this meeting, in one of the next meetings for sure. But I'll try and get to it in this meeting. So another little reminder. Can you feel gravity pulling you down towards the center of the earth? We don't usually think about this. How often do you think gravity is actually pulling me down towards the center of the earth? We just go about our day and we feel that we have a weight, our body has a weight. But actually, as we sit and we just notice that we're actually gently being pulled towards the center of the earth, it can give us a slightly different perspective. But yeah, I can get more into that in later sessions. So it's 7:05. I imagine that most people who are coming are already here. So we'll get started. I just want to start by saying thank you to everyone who's signed up for this. We've been kind of working towards this for about 10 years, really. We've been on a journey of recovery from anxiety and transformation for about 10, or in Sean's case, 12 years. And it's really been the commitment of our lives. We've committed basically our whole lives, the whole of our 20s, we committed to overcoming anxiety, to finding peace inside, to finding happiness inside. And we didn't do this, we didn't choose to do this. We did it out of necessity because we were suffering a lot. We were struggling a lot. So, yeah, it's really great to have everybody here. I hope you feel settled, and we'll jump in with the first session of this 3-part program on overcoming anxiety. So to start with, I'm going to tell my story, and then Sean's going to tell a little bit about his story. And then we're just kind of going to go into a bit of a teaching before we take questions at the end. So I'll start. Yeah, I started suffering from, well, I've probably suffered from anxiety from around the age of 14, but I wasn't aware of it. I didn't know that was what it was. I just knew that I avoided certain situations. And I couldn't put my hand up in the classroom. I got nervous around teachers, this sort of stuff. And I just thought it was the way I was. I didn't realize I had anything called anxiety. When I was 18, I went off to university, and that's kind of when everything changed for me. I started suffering from depression at the age of 18. And I started noticing that I couldn't go to my lectures. I was too anxious to go to my lectures, basically because I thought everyone was judging me. I had this feeling that there was something wrong with me and that everyone was judging me. I had this sense of shame inside, and it was really horrible. Anyway, after about a year of me basically locking myself in my dorm bedroom, drinking 3 or 4 beers every night just to kind of get by, I quit university and went traveling for a little while, which sounds nice, but it really wasn't, because I was so anxious the whole time and so insecure the whole time. Anyway, I coped in the normal ways that we cope, the normal ways that young men generally cope, which is alcohol, smoking weed, watching endless things on Netflix, just distracting myself from my own anxiety, distracting myself from my own pain. When I was 21 years old, things got a hell of a lot worse really, really quickly. And almost overnight, I entered into a state of just the most intense fear, the most intense psychological suffering. And I got caught in a place of just a continuous stream of fearful, panicked thinking. And it was just a horrible, horrible experience. And after about a month of this experience of being totally lost in this really panicked place, I found my way to a psychologist called Sandy. And she was helping me to, using cognitive behavioral therapy, to kind of change my thinking patterns around a bit and try and resolve things through changing my behaviors and changing my thinking patterns. And that was super helpful. But yeah, it only got me so far. It didn't really heal the anxiety that I was experiencing until I found mindfulness, until I found meditation. And what this taught me was something that in all these years of going to see my psychologist, Sandy, for 3 years, and she's one of the highest trained psychologists in the UK, and she was really great. She never once taught me these very simple principles, which are just so essential for healing anxiety, but so missing in like most of Western psychology. One of the most important things that I learned was that in order to heal our fear, in order to heal our anxiety, we need to stop running away from it. We need to stop trying to escape it. And instead, we need to turn towards it. And I read this book. It was called Inner Bonding. And it taught me to treat my anxiety, to treat my fear in the same way that I would treat a scared and crying child. It taught me to speak to my fear. When the fearful reactions came up, to speak to it, to say, it's okay, it's okay. It taught me to meet this anxiety with care, with love, because it is love that heals anxiety. It is love that heals fear. It is care that heals anxiety. It is care that heals fear. Now, most men have been conditioned to think that caring is a feminine thing. We're not conditioned to really value care, especially not towards ourselves. And it can feel a little bit strange to suddenly start caring for ourselves. But this is how we heal anxiety. If a child is afraid and they come up to you and they're really scared, and you push them away and tell them you don't want them anywhere near you, what's that child going to feel? They're going to feel more fear. However, if that child is scared and they come up to you and you pick the child up, you tell that child that you love them, you tell them that it's going to be okay, the child can relax and their fear leaves them. Exactly the same principle can be applied to ourselves. Exactly the same principle can be applied to healing our own anxiety, to healing our own fear, to meet it with love. And there's many ways in which we can do this. This is the feminine approach to healing anxiety. There's also a masculine approach, which I can talk about as well. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. Anyway, I want to pass you over to Sean in a minute, but I just want to say that through these practices of meditation and through these methods of healing that we've found, I went from being probably one of the most anxious people in the world. Well, I don't know, but I was very anxious, very afraid, quite traumatized, really, to being in a place where I have peace in my own heart, where I feel this sense of causeless love inside. It feels good to be alive. I'm not afraid to do the things that I used to be terrified of. I used to live in this tiny little box. I could hardly speak to people. I couldn't walk into a shop without getting anxious. And now that's just not the case at all. I can go into a bar and play songs. I can speak to whoever I want. I'm running courses like this. And it is possible for everybody to overcome their fear. It is possible for everybody to overcome their anxiety. And I really believe that there's so much missing from Western psychology. There's so much missing from counseling and the therapies that are widely available. And that's why we created this program. It's to bring these teachings, which we really had to go to India to find. Well, we've had lots of teachers around the UK as well, but these teachings originate from the East, to really discover how to find freedom and how to find peace. And we want to share these with you. So yeah, that's my little or not so little introduction. And now I'm going to pass you over to my good friend, Sean. Actually, I'll say one more little thing first. Yeah, it was, I think, about 5 years into my recovery, maybe 5 or 6 years into my recovery. I went to a meditation class in Liverpool city centre. And that's where I met Sean. And instantly I was like, oh, this is my guy. Like, he's such a good guy. And we just clicked. And we both had this incredible passion for meditation. And we both just loved this stuff. Like, we wanted to be free. And we tried, like, we were trying so hard. Like, really, both of us were trying so hard. Sean was meditating for 5 hours a day or something. And so was I. We really went for it. Which is a good thing, by the way, to really go for it, if that's what you feel to do. And we just started walking around the park in Liverpool, like every day, just talking about all we'd been through, everything we'd experienced. And it was he was such an amazing addition to my life, to have this friend who I could talk to about this stuff. Because so many men feel like they can't talk about this stuff with people, or not really. And if they do they really understand? Do they really get it? Well, we get it. We've experienced anxiety in so many different ways. We've really been through it, so we get it. We understand each other. And hopefully you can understand us and we can understand you, and we can help you get to this place of peace. So without further ado, I introduce my good friend and mindfulness teacher and anxiety coach, Sean Jones.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's really good to be here, and yeah, thanks so much, Chris. Like, so good to hear your story. Each time I hear it, actually, I'm just filled with inspiration more than anything. Yeah. So yeah, just to give a kind of a synopsis of my journey with anxiety. So I mean, I was always described as quite a shy kind of child, and I guess there was some sense of anxiety in me from quite a young age. But when I was 17, I had an accident in a river where I almost lost my life. Now, I now know that after this accident, I definitely suffered from what's known as PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. And pretty soon after the accident, I noticed that I became a really anxious person. And so really small things would stress me out. I used to have to go quite far to college every single day. And just simply that journey became too overwhelming for me. Quite a lot of other things were really overwhelming, things like social situations. So, I'd be sitting in the pub with all of my friends and I'd just be kind of a nervous wreck. I'd be sweating, I'd experience all these physical symptoms of anxiety. A lot of the symptoms I experienced was stuff like sweating, like I mentioned to you, and things like not being able to sleep at night, waking up in the middle of the night, trying to think, intrusive thoughts, worrying all the time, catastrophizing, this kind of thing. That was kind of a daily thing for me for quite a while. And then there came a point at some point where I was just totally finished with it. I got to the point where I just totally had enough of the anxiety, and I knew that there had to be a way out out of this. And so I seeked all the kind of conventional forms of therapy. So like I went to a doctor, I took antidepressant medication. I, tried CBT, I tried counseling, I tried all these things. And some of them helped, but to be honest, none of them got to the root cause of my anxiety. And that's why I was really, really seeking. I wasn't someone that wanted to just live with this anxiety for the rest of my life. I was someone that I wanted to be free. I knew that there was so much that I had to contribute in my life, and there was so much that I could give, but the anxiety was holding me back. So I knew that I had to do literally anything I could to find a way out. So I did, and that's when I came across mindfulness, and mindfulness was really the key that changed everything for me. So I did an 8-week mindfulness course, and pretty soon I noticed that actually meditating every day really helped to relieve all those symptoms. So I started to sleep better. I started to feel less stressed in all these situations that I normally felt really stressed in. I started to be less worried. And once I knew that mindfulness was working, I just totally committed to it 100%. And I decided to practice every day. And this was probably like 7-8 years ago. And I've practiced every day since then. And it's been an amazing journey for me to come out of that anxiety and to come to where I am right now. So yeah, it's been a massive journey for me. It's not just mindfulness that's helped me. I've also gone quite deeply into the yoga practices as well. Like Chris was saying, a lot of these teachings and a lot of what we teach now come from the East. So I really delved quite deep into that. I did a lot of kind of trauma work as well to help me overcome all the difficult things that happened to me when I was younger. And now I'd say I'm in a vastly different place to where I was, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. I now work as a coach, and I help people specifically who are suffering with anxiety. And I teach them how mindfulness specifically and some other practices can help them to come out of the anxiety. And yeah, that's just kind of a brief synopsis of me, really. Yeah. Cool. So should we go into questions now, Chris?
Yeah, sure, man. Yeah. Let's do it.
Cool. Okay. So one of the things I wanted to ask you was, what do you think the most important step you can take is to overcoming anxiety?
Most important step. Okay, I'm going to have to give two. The first one is what I already spoke about, which is we need to learn to love ourselves. People who experience anxiety, they have these emotional reactions coming up. They have these fearful reactions coming up in the body. And that fear in the body starts driving these fearful thoughts in the mind. And then these fearful thoughts in the mind start driving the emotions in the body. and then the emotions in the body feed the fearful thoughts. And what happens is this vicious cycle is created, whereby the emotion is just feeding the thoughts, and the thoughts are feeding the emotion, and you get caught in this loop of anxiety, this loop of worrying thinking, which can go on and on and on. And actually, it's our thinking which causes us suffering. It's our thinking, our fearful thoughts, which are the reason we don't like anxiety. That's the reason that everyone's on this call, because we don't actually, because these thoughts are distressing. So most people, if a reaction comes up, say someone says something to you, or you read something, or something happens which brings up a reaction, an anxious reaction, most people just stay kind of stuck in this. They don't know a way out. We don't know a way out. So what I used to do, the only thing I could do was distract myself, how to get out of this reaction. Okay, I'll go on my phone, I'll go on Facebook, I'll watch videos, I'll drink a beer and watch TV. We try all these things to get away from the anxiety, to escape from it, to escape from this vicious cycle of thinking and emotion. Yet, there is a way in which we can free ourselves from this vicious cycle. There is a way in which we can heal this mechanism of anxiety. There's a couple of ways. Actually, there's a few ways. I'll give you one of them now, and I already spoke about this. If, when this reaction takes place and the fearful emotions start driving the fearful, anxious thoughts, and the anxious thoughts start creating the emotions, if, when that starts happening, instead of placing our attention up here in the thinking, we allow our attention to come down into the feelings, and we feel the feelings, then that vicious cycle stops moving. When your attention is fully in the body, when you're fully holding and feeling your feelings, then the mind settles down. It's like the child analogy that I spoke about earlier. If that child is really scared, what does it need? It needs your attention, it needs your love, it needs your care. You pick the child up, you hold that child until the child feels safe. We can do the same with our emotions, we can do the same with our fear. When it comes up, we drop our attention into our bodies. We feel our bodies, we feel the emotions. And it's so amazing when we do this, because we can come into such a place of peace inside. Anxiety, you may have heard this, it's like a split inside. Our thoughts are all up here and our body's down here and our emotions are down here. We're giving so much attention to these thoughts that we feel like we're cut off from our bodies, and we're cut off from our hearts. And we're cut off from our natural state of joy, the state of joy that we knew when we were little kids. You see a little child, 3-year-old child with such joy inside. Why are children so much more joyful than adults? Because they're not caught in this continuous stream of thinking, which is usually negative. No, they're not in that. Their attention isn't up there. They're in their bodies. So one of the ways that we can reverse the process of anxiety is by coming back into our bodies, by bringing attention back down into our bodies. Now, this can feel like a scary thing to do, or maybe not scary, but uncomfortable. The reason anxiety is going, the reason that we develop anxiety disorders, is because since we were little children, our emotions were too much for us to feel. Our fear was too much for us to feel. And if we grew up in a stressful, fearful environment, then these then it would have created so much fearful emotion within our bodies. And because of this, we learned to escape up into thinking. Our emotions were too much for us to feel. Innocently, of course, a child doesn't want to feel these emotions. How can they escape? What feels better than the strong emotions in the body? The thinking, fantasies, dreams, thoughts. So the child, and this is all subconscious, they don't know they're doing this, comes up into the thinking. Say dad gets home from work or a teacher shouts at you at school, and it brings up a fearful reaction in you or a stressful reaction in you. And you're a child, you're 3 years old, 4 years old, or even 10 years old. This is a shock. It shocks the child. They get these emotions inside. They don't know what to do with them. Probably their parents don't really know what to do with these emotions. And so the child needs to get away from it. So they come up into thinking. Now, eventually, when the trigger has settled down, the child settles down again. The thinking subsides, or the escaping subsides, and they're back in their body. And they're happy and they feel whole and at peace and content. But then something else happens at school. Someone says something mean to them. The emotion comes up. And again, they escape up into thinking. The split happens inside. But the child comes back down. And eventually they're back in their body and they're back in their joy again. But what happens is, when we go through school, when we become teenagers, when we go through life, because this is quite a stressful world if you haven't noticed, all these emotions start happening to us, and we are continuously coming up into this escape into the mind until it gets to a point where the teenager or the young adult just stays up in the mind. This thinking mind has been created now. And all of the attention is up here, continuously in this thinking mind. And we're totally cut off from our bodies. Someone who's suffering from anxiety probably experienced a lot of emotion when they were younger, especially if you were a sensitive young lad, then you would have experienced a lot of emotion. And so there would have been this need to think, and that has stayed with you probably. And now, as an anxious person, you probably notice that there's these thoughts, these worrying thoughts, which can drive you mad. Like, you don't want to worry. Look, there's nothing really to worry about, but you're just worrying. It's because of the emotions we have in our bodies. It's because there's this mechanism of not wanting to feel our fear, not wanting to feel our sadness, not wanting to feel our shame. So how do we heal? How do we reverse this process? It's quite simple. We come back into and we feel the feelings that we were unable to feel as a little child. We feel the feelings that we ran away from when we were a little child. When we were that little child, we could not feel them. We didn't have the opportunity. Nobody taught us this. We didn't have the awareness. We didn't have the presence to do this. But now, as an adult, and if you're on this call, you have the opportunity to do this. You have the opportunity to be there for and meet all the feelings that little child was just totally alone with. You can be the loving adult, the loving parent to your own emotions, to your own fearful child. Because anxiety, it really is like a scared child inside. And we all have this love in our hearts. We all do. And this love can heal our fear. It's this love which can come into this scared child and hold this scared child. Now, you might be thinking now, okay, how do I do this? And we'll explain. Yeah, there are ways. There's lots of ways that we teach people how to do this. For now, I'm not going to go into all the different ways that we can do it, but there's lots and lots of ways and means for reacquainting ourselves with this scared child and for healing that one. And when we heal that one, when we meet that one, when we hold that child in our heart, in our arms, the split within becomes healed. And we feel whole again. And we feel at peace again. And we feel like nothing's missing. And I'm not sure about you guys, but when I was younger, from the age of about maybe 14, maybe younger, up until I discovered this, I always felt like something wasn't quite right. Something was missing. I wasn't quite settled. Maybe the girlfriend will complete me. Maybe if I have the perfect job and I go on these amazing holidays, that will complete me. Maybe that will get rid of this feeling that something's not right. But no, when we come to meet our emotions with our awareness, when we bring our attention into it and we hold that child, the split within, like I say, becomes healed. And we do feel whole again. We do feel whole again. Really, it's possible to live in a completely different way. Most adults are cut off from their bodies, especially men. And so there's this unsettledness, everyone wanting happiness and finding like superficial bursts of happiness through events, you know, a good TV show, you know, a bike ride or a party or whatever. But that's all good. It's great to enjoy those things. But what do we really want? We want lasting happiness. We want lasting peace. And the way that we can achieve that is through what me and Sean teach, is through the healing of that split within and other things. This is just one approach that we've spoken about so far. And like I said at the start of the question, there's two major approaches. I want to get to the second major approach before the end of this session. But for now, I feel like it's time for me to pass the baton over to Sean, and I'll get back to the second approach later on, hopefully, if not in following weeks. So I was getting a lot of messages, Sean, about people who are suffering from social anxiety and shyness. We both experienced this, and I know that you experienced this. And now my experience of you is one of the most like confident, laid back, chilled out people I know. And like, if you hang out with Sean, he's just so cool. Like, I know I'm biased because he's my friend, but he's just so laid back and really like living his purpose and really like living from a place of strength and like I feel he's in a really good place and like miles away from what he used to describe as suffering from intense shyness and social anxiety. And he's still like a sensitive, like humble guy, not, you know, but yeah, so I lost my thought there. Anyway, Sean, I'd like you to talk about how to overcome social anxiety and shyness, because I know lots of people on this call have been suffering from it. So I'd like your perspective.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so just kind of given kind of an idea of where I was at, I remember being, I mean, I was always called like a shy boy when I was young. That was always kind of like something that was said to me by people. And it kind of became my identity for a while. You know, I always kind of thought of myself or knew myself as a shy kind of person. And I found things like having to speak in public was probably the most fearful thing for me, you know, out of anything, like having to speak in front of a group of people. It's funny now, like I lead yoga classes, I lead meditation retreats where there's 30, 40, 50 people that I'm speaking in front of, and it's totally fine for me, you know. I'll lead singing sessions where I sing for people as well, and it is totally fine. So for me, it's been like a massive change. And the social anxiety was something that I really, really struggled with. Like I really wanted to not feel socially anxious. Really wanted to not feel shy. I wanted to be able to kind of step out into the world and not feel that anxiety, you know? So for me, it was kind of a gradual process. The first kind of major step I did was just practicing meditation every day. And that really helped me to meet that fear. So a little bit about what Chris was kind of speaking about then, about one of the main kind of ways to heal from any anxiety is actually to stop distracting yourself from it. So when it does come up, you know, we stop running onto Facebook, we stop going on watching TV, we stop doing all these kind of distraction methods. There might be stuff like excessive exercise. You know, that was my distraction, was I just kind of, I'd run all day, I would go climbing all day, I'd do anything that was kind of get me away from the anxiety. So the meditation helped me to kind of what a little bit about what Chris was speaking about healing that split within. You know, I managed to actually come to actually feeling that fear. I use a saying, what you're feeling, you're healing. And if you're able to actually be present with that anxiety, present with it, and to sit with it instead of run away from it, then it heals over time. It's such a simple teaching, but it's one of the main teachings, and it's not a teaching that you necessarily hear elsewhere. So through meditation, I managed to actually meet that fear and to be present with it. And then it got so much better, you know. I also learned how to calm my nervous system, which was a huge one, you know, as someone who had suffered with some trauma and was, you know, and generally had quite a rattled nervous system. I learned through yoga, through breathing, through meditation, how to calm that nervous system, how to soothe that nervous system. So initially, those are the things that really helped me in social situations. I noticed that my mind was used to being in the meditative state, which is kind of a more relaxed state, a more present state. And I was able to enter the meditative state during my day. So I'd be in a social situation and I'd notice the kind of the habitual response that I had, which was to feel nervous, to feel anxious, to feel shy. But I also knew that I had access to the meditative state within me as well. So I was able to kind of access that calmness, access that peace, which then allowed me to interact more socially. So that was a really important one. But another really important one, and I think me and Chris have spoken about this a lot before as well, is to actually put myself in the deep end a little bit with social situations. So initially I needed to calm my nervous system. I needed to know how to enter the meditative state so that I could be calm enough in social situations. And then what I needed to do was to put myself in the deep end a little bit. So, you know, I knew that speaking in public was something that really scared me. So I forced myself to put myself in situations where I did that. I remember when I taught my first yoga class many years ago. I was really nervous. I was really shy. My social anxiety came up really strong, you know. But I put myself in the deep end with it. And after I felt so much better. And I just constantly just putting myself in the deep end with it. You know, I started singing in front of people. That was a big thing that brought up my social anxiety. I started kind of speaking to big groups, you know. And over time, it totally healed, totally. And now social anxiety, I can honestly say, is not something I experience at all anymore. I can't even remember the last time I felt anxious in a social situation. So yeah, I mean, to give a quick little summary, the first thing was to meet that fear and to learn to calm my nervous system down. And then once I'd done that, I was then able to kind of put myself in a bit more of the deep end and learn to kind of learn that those situations didn't need to make me anxious, and that I knew that I could actually face them and be present with them. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I think I basically would have said exactly the same thing. Yeah, it's the two things, isn't it? It's like there's the one teaching, which is just put yourself in those social situations that you don't want to be in. Like, stop avoiding doing the things that you've been avoiding doing. Because if you're socially anxious and shy, you just avoid everything because that feels safer. So to like start slowly putting yourself into situations which bring that anxiety up a little bit starts to kind of push that comfort zone, and you gradually start to expand. And yeah, I went on that same journey. I used to write down like 5 things before I went to bed that I was afraid to do the next day, like little things. And I was like so shy at this point, I could barely like walk into a shop without like going red and getting embarrassed. And so I would write little things down before I went to bed, like a little on a little piece of paper. And it would be like, go to a bar in Liverpool. I lived in Liverpool at the time. In the day, and just sit at the bar and order like a lemonade and just sit there. And I was like so committed, I have to overcome this. And so I would do these things, and then it would like get a bit more. I would like go to a squash class or a boxing class, which used to terrify me. Like, I was so afraid of social situations that the thought of going to like some sort of class was just, it would terrify me. I could barely do it. But I used to just go, like, feel the fear and do it anyway. Just go to these things and slowly started to recognize that they were safe. Gradually expanded and expanded. And every day, if I was afraid to do something, I would just do it. I couldn't not do it if I was afraid to. It became like almost an obsession because I just wanted to be free of the social anxiety. I wanted to be myself. I really wanted to be myself. I knew I wasn't that shy, quiet lad. I knew I had this joy inside that wanted to express. I knew how expressive I could be. And so I was just so committed. Sorry, I'm going off on one a bit now, but I'll keep going because it's happening. Yeah, and then eventually it came to a point where, you know, I've been doing this for a while. Actually, my goal, I used to see these buskers in Liverpool. They'd have a mic and like an amp, and they were usually students. I was a student at the time. I was like 21. And I thought, these guys are so cool. Like, I wish I was as cool and confident as them. How can they stand in the middle of town with hundreds of people going past and sing and chat to everyone going past? And I thought, I want to be like that. And I was a singer. I played guitar. So after about 6 months of doing this, I find myself like nervously going down to town with my guitar. Didn't even have an amp at that time, just standing on the street, just singing to the street full of people. I don't think I even had a good voice at the time, but I just did it for the challenge. And then it became, I fell in love with it. I was like, this is like something that can really open me up. And I got myself a mic and an amp and a harmonica, and I would just go like every Friday, Saturday night, singing to like all the drunk people in Liverpool. And I would get like hen parties coming up to me, like dancing with me, giving me like quite a lot of money. Actually, I made a fair bit, but so that's a different point. But anyway, I just had such like an amazing time for like a couple of years busking, and that's how I like paid for a lot of my like university stuff. And yeah, it just just really opened up. But also, I really love your point, Sean, that this must be coupled with a meditation practice or a practice of presence, a practice of being able to be in a state where we're not constantly being pulled in by our reactions. Because if you go into a social situation and the reactions come up, it can just repeat itself. That fearful reaction can come up, and it's just like, it's almost not healing to do what I just suggested. I think it is healing anyway. I still would suggest people to do that even if they don't have a meditation practice. But if you can combine the two, then it can be really, really, really useful, because then you can go into these situations and the emotions come up, because they'll still come up, the fear will still come up. That will start creating the thoughts. He's thinking this about me. They think this about me. How am I holding my hands? They obviously don't want me here. All these thoughts that our mind comes up with. Basically, none of it's true, really. Basically, none of those thoughts are true. Yeah. I lost where I was going with that. But so if you can enter that space with more awareness, and this is basically what we're teaching. What we teach is for people to grow in awareness of their emotions, to grow in awareness of their thoughts. If you can come into these situations with that awareness, then it's a whole world of difference. And that brings me on to something else I want to talk about. Do you mind if I go into this, Sean?
Yeah, man, go for it.
So like I was saying, we teach people to grow in awareness. We teach people to grow in presence. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're suffering from anxiety, likelihood is, like I say, you've had these fearful, worrying thoughts moving through your mind. And chances are that you're kind of identified with them. You're really tightly bound to these fearful thoughts. Now, if you can see these thoughts, if when these fearful thoughts come through your mind and you see them, you cannot be them. How could you be a thought if you can see it? How can you be the thought if you can see it? This is the masculine approach to healing anxiety, which I spoke about. And this is the approach of coming away from that mind. The first approach was going into the body, meeting the feelings. The second approach is seeing our anxious, worrying mind. And when we see it, just through seeing it, just through the power of us being aware of it, we kind of come away from it a bit. So a practice for you when you're walking down the street, or even if you get up in the morning, probably your normal habit has been to be in these thoughts and to be believing these thoughts and thinking really bound up within these thoughts. And that has just been causing so much suffering. It can cause so much distress. So what I want you to do is watch the thoughts, see it come in. Say a fearful thought, oh, this is going to happen in the future. I'm afraid of this meeting tomorrow, whatever. If that thought's happening and you're believing yourself to be that thought, you're suffering. However, if that fearful thought comes through your mind and you see it, you are the awareness that sees it, and you come away from it. And it's still happening, but it's You're not identified with it. You're not so caught up within it. And so you're not suffering. Now, at first, we can just come away from it a little bit. We're just seeing the thoughts. And this can feel like, we can still feel quite bound up within them. But through meditation and through what we teach, slowly, gradually, you come away from that thinking mind. Because like I say, it's the thinking mind which is causing all of your suffering. It's the thinking mind which is causing your anxiety. So to become aware of it, you can start to come away from it. You can start to disidentify from it. Because you are not the thoughts inside of your head. You are not a scared person. You are not an anxious person. There is an anxious person inside of you. What do I mean by that? You are not the fearful thoughts. You are aware of them. You are the awareness of them. There's a world of difference between being identified with the thoughts, being really caught up within them, which is suffering, and being aware of them, being aware of the mind. So like I say, there's two main approaches to healing and overcoming anxiety. Meeting the feelings, the feminine approach, the approach of care, meeting the feelings with love, with care, bringing those feelings home, allowing your nervous system to relax and unwind like a really caring mother or father would do. And then there's the more what you could call masculine approach, which is seeing the mind, coming away from it. You're not that. And this is how we find freedom. This is how we find freedom from our fear. This is how we overcome our anxiety. I hope I haven't confused anyone, and I hope that you're following all of this. It's actually really, really very simple. It might take you hearing these messages a few times for it to really sink in. Or maybe you get it just like that. But yeah, okay. I think I've said all I need to say about that for now. So it's nearly 8 o'clock, so we've got about half an hour left. Shall we go into people's questions, Sean?
I think that's a good idea, yeah.
Okay, so this is a question from Tom. He says, how do you deal with people around you who make you anxious, like family?
That's a really good question. And I think, especially if you're someone that's sensitive, being around other people that are anxious can have an effect upon you. It's almost like sometimes we feel like we almost absorb other people's emotions and other people's feelings. I think a few things that can be really useful. One is to be aware of the people around you that do cause you anxiety. You know, it might be that you've got some friends or some people that you meet up often with, and some part of you actually doesn't feel that great after being around them. You know, and it might be that you need to be a bit more boundaried with in terms of who you're spending a lot of time with. And I think that's really, really important. Mindfulness and meditation can really help with that because it can bring a greater awareness to us and a greater awareness of how we feel around certain people. And it can bring greater awareness of the thoughts that come to us when we're around certain people. So one thing is maybe to try to be quite boundaried with the people you do spend time with, and try to spend less time around people that do do cause you anxiety. The other one, another thing to do is to try to be really present with yourself and your body when you are in contact with someone that's maybe causing you anxiety. So often when we're around someone that's maybe causing us stress and anxiety, we're totally in the head. You know, Chris was talking a little bit about this earlier on. We can be really just in our mind and in our thoughts and in the anxiety. But if you can actually land that awareness in your body and be really present with those feelings, you'll notice that actually you don't get so affected by being around that person. It's almost like your awareness creates a shield around you and protects you from the anxiety that you experience around those people. So I think those are the two main things. Try to be really present during those times when you are with someone. Mindfulness and meditation will really help you with that. And also to be boundaried, you know, and it's okay to be boundaried. And to, what I mean by being boundaried is to not spend so much time around someone that maybe does cause you anxiety, or maybe even to share with them, you know, how you feel around them. They might be doing or saying things that are not okay for you and that are overstepping your boundary without you being aware. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. And anything else you want to add, Chris, or any comments?
No, I just want to say, like, through doing this healing work, through like meeting our feelings and healing that inner child, really, it does like drastically improve our relationships. For instance, I used to like really not get on very well with my dad. Like for a while, I didn't get on so well with him. And I used to feel a lot of fear around him, and I used to have to like leave the room when he was there and stuff like that. It was really hard. And now, a few years after doing all of this work, me and my dad are like really close, and I just see him as this like really like joyful, amazing guy who I like love so much. And it wasn't through him changing. It wasn't through him changing at all. It was through my own inner work. It was through my transformation that that our relationship improved, and that now we're like really close. So I think that's just what I wanted to add. Like through doing this work, all your relationships change. You start to see like the beauty in people. You start to see the child within them. Because you know how I said, like when we're kids, this split happens inside. Or when we become teenagers and adults, we have this split inside. So we're up in our thinking and this worrying thinking, and we're cut off from our bodies. And this makes us lose touch with our own joy. It makes us lose touch with the goodness inside of our own hearts. But when we come back into our bodies like this, when we start to meet these feelings and when we start to go through this process of healing, we start to feel our own goodness again. Like, you know, the goodness that you see in a little child when they're just like running around playing in the park, and that smile you see on their face. You start to get this back for yourself. You start to get this kind of, this causeless joy inside, and you feel this like sense of goodness inside. Maybe you can feel it just a little bit right now. Maybe not. There's just something in you that's kind of good, that feels okay and good. And when you get in touch with this within yourself, you start to see it in others around you. So where I used to see my family in kind of a negative light, my family, oh my God, like they're so stressful. Like this, oh God, it's so hard. Now because I've come a lot more out of my mind and a lot more into my heart, I see from my heart. I don't see from my mind. So I'm not seeing them through the lens of my own judgments. I'm seeing them from my heart. And so because I'm in my heart, I can see their hearts. And this totally changes the way that you relate to people. You start to really feel love for everyone around you, even strangers. You can feel this causeless love and joy. This love towards them. It's quite amazing, actually. It's quite beautiful. So yeah, again, I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I hope I answered the question a little bit. Oh, I like this comment by Ross. Not even a question, but feeling so emotional. Just now listening to this, to feel like people understand me and there's a way out. Thank you guys so much for doing this. Ross, like, thank you for your comment. This is like so strong within us that we want to tell people that there is a way out, that there is a way to heal, and that we do understand you. We really understand it. And yeah, we just want to teach people how to overcome this, because it is horrible. It's not nice at all living in a place of fear and anxiety, and there totally is a way out. There totally is a way to overcome it. So thank you so much for your comment. Just trying to find a question for Sean. So someone's asked, they say that when they wake up in the morning, they feel anxious. And they feel like they have OCD in the mornings. So yeah, this is very common, isn't it? Like that you wake up in the morning, you've got all these thoughts and it's like, oh God, like the day, like let me go back into dream world. Let me go back into my like sleep. And actually the morning, as soon as you wake up, is a very good time to practice what we're talking about, isn't it? So Sean, do you want to give some tips on what you do when you wake up in the morning, or what you have done when you wake up and you're feeling anxious and you have these thoughts spinning? What would you do?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Chris, I'm actually with most of the clients that I work with, morning anxiety is a big one, you know, like you said, like people wake up and you might suddenly have like a rush of fear run through your body, you know, and like you said, Chris, well, anxiety about the day, you know, like I've got to go through this whole day and I don't know how I'm going to feel. I mean, some of the most useful things I found were an ability to meet that fear. So like what I mean by that is an ability to be really, really present with that fear when it comes. So normally we'll busy ourselves, you know, normally we'll get up, we'll feel anxious and we'll kind of busy ourselves, you know, we'll find a way to run away from the anxiety. And I think this is what maybe one of the main teachings that we've kind of, that's come from this discussion tonight, is to learn through meditation practice to really feel and be present with that fear as it comes up. And like I said earlier, what you're feeling, you're healing. So if you're able to be present with it, if you're able to feel it, it'll heal. I used to also use the saying, what you resist persists. So if anxiety or fear comes up and we fight it, if we resist it, then it just carries on, you know, it's just going to continue. Or we'll bury it deep down inside of us. And we all know if we're burying our anxiety, if we're burying our feelings, then it's not actually going anywhere. So yeah, firstly, like learning to be present with it and to meet it. A few other things that can be really useful is be present with your breath, just learning to breathe through it, learning to bring yourself into a relaxed state. You know, we talk about the parasympathetic nervous system, which is when we're in what they call rest and digest, which is a more relaxed way of being. And if you can train yourself through meditation practice to come into that, then you'll feel a whole lot better. One last thing is I really dedicated myself during this time to doing morning practice, you know. So I'd wake up and I do my yoga practice and I do my meditation practice. And those were things that I never missed. And for me, that really worked really well. Like I 100% committed to doing those practices every morning and every day. And it helped so much, you know, and to constantly do that day after day after day after day after day, relieved so much of the anxiety. And it didn't take me too long before I stopped experiencing anxiety in the morning. One more thing to say as well is often we experience anxiety in the morning when we've not had a good sleep, when we've had troubled sleep or we've not slept long enough. And these practices really help you to sleep better, you know, which is a massive thing for so many of us. Sleep is quite a big issue. So if you can follow these practices and follow the stuff that we can teach you, sleep comes better. And often when you sleep better, you wake up in a better state, you know, in a less of a stressed, anxious state. Yeah. So yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Sean. That was great. I just want to add to that. I just had a little practice kind of come into my mind that I wanted to share with people. So this can be when you're going to sleep at night, or it can be when you wake up in the morning, or it can be any time throughout the day. It's a very simple practice, but it can really start to change things for you. It can really give you a kind of an anchor of peace in your experience, so you're not getting so lost in all of this fear and anxiety. So I want you to imagine that you're waking up in the morning, and you wake up and straight away you feel these thoughts come up into your mind, and you're like, no, like thinking of what's going to go wrong, thinking of things in the day, thinking of whatever you usually get anxious about, that comes up into your mind. Now, I imagine what a lot of people do when that starts happening is they'll just get their phone out because it's not nice. I'll distract myself on Facebook. I'll watch YouTube videos. I'll check my emails, whatever. Now, what you can do instead is when you wake up and you notice that your attention has come up into the thinking, you notice that your attention is lost in this thinking, and that's causing you distress and suffering, really, is you can just bring your attention into the hands. And why doesn't everybody just try this now? This very basic teaching. Just place your hands on your lap or have them facing up. And they can be however they are when you're lying in bed. And just, can you feel a slight tingling sensation in your fingers? What do your hands feel like? Don't think about them. Don't think about it. Just feel them. This is the movement of attention into the hands. I can feel like a slight tingling sensation, a slight buzzing sensation. Now, if you just rest your attention in your hands and feel them, they will become just a bit more vivid within your awareness. It's like you can feel the hands from within. You can feel this energy inside of your hands. Maybe you just feel a little bit of tingling. Whatever you can feel, that's totally okay. Now, what this does, it redirects attention away from the thinking, because it is attention which fuels the anxious thinking mind. It is because we give the thinking so much attention that it keeps going. So by redirecting our attention into the hands like this, it can just start to settle that thinking down. Feel your fingers, feel your palms. And maybe if you get in touch with your fingers, you can then start feeling your toes, tingling in your feet, your legs, your arms, maybe your whole body. Don't worry if you can't feel much at first. This will grow with time. This capacity to feel your body will grow with time. We've been so used to being up here in the mind, up above the neck, that we've lost touch with our bodies. And a great way to reintroduce yourself to your body is through feeling your hands, through feeling your fingers, feeling your hands from within, from the inside. Another thing has come for me to share about what you can do when you wake up in the morning. You may have heard of affirmations. An affirmation is a phrase that you say to yourself. The fearful thinking is very negative, and it can cause us a lot of emotion and a lot of stress. So we can drop these very positive phrases, sentences into our experience. And one amazing one that I want to introduce you to is this. You just say to yourself, there's a place of perfect peace inside of me. There's a place of perfect peace inside of me. And you feel that place. You feel that peace. Your true nature is peaceful. When you came out of the womb, obviously there's a lot of crying at first, but when you're a baby and you haven't got this ego, when you're sitting in your pram, when you're 1 year old, you're at peace. Emotions can happen, but the general state is peace. Our natural state is peace. And it's always here. This peace is always here, just below the thoughts. Just below the thinking, there is this reservoir of peace. And through meditation and through using these affirmations and these little things that we're teaching, this peace starts to just come more and more to the forefront of your experience until it gets to a point where the peace is dominant and the anxious thinking and anxious emotions are in the background. And then you just start to savor the peace. You enjoy the peace. And if you're suffering from anxiety, you really value peace. We really value peace if we've been through a lot of stress and a lot of fear. And because you value it, you will cherish it. And because you cherish it, it will grow. And you will come into this new way of being, which is just, it's so much nicer. Every single person on this planet is looking for one thing. Every single person is looking for one thing. Happiness. We all want lasting happiness. Everyone's looking for it in different ways. If I get famous, if I buy the best car, if I make enough money, if I go on this dream holiday, if I just have the perfect girlfriend, perfect boyfriend, whatever, then I'll be happy. But what happens to these millionaire, famous people when they've got everything in the world? One of two things usually. They get really into drugs or they find meditation. There's a lot of these famous people who've got everything in the world that come to meditation because they've realized that happiness doesn't lie in what they can achieve in the world. And it comes from within. can sound like a hippie-ish thing to say, but it really does come from within. Happiness is within. And if you're suffering from anxiety, in a certain sense, you are lucky. Let me explain why. Because the anxiety will force you, if you let it, will force you into discovering this place of causeless peace inside. And you will value and cherish that peace so much that it becomes part of your everyday experience. And actually, what that peace is happiness. What that peace is what we're all looking for. A sense of being settled, a sense of just feeling good for being alive. And your anxiety, which may feel like the hardest thing in the world right now, you may just want it to go away, you may hate it. It's horrible. Yeah? This very anxiety that you really don't want could be the best thing that has ever happened to you. Could be the best thing that could ever happen to you, because it will drive you, if you want it to, into discovering what every single person on the planet is looking for: lasting happiness, inner peace, a sense of being settled, a sense of goodness inside. But we have a choice. If we continue to think of ourselves as a victim to our anxiety, if we continue to not really take action to heal it, to transform it, then we can just carry on being anxious for years and years, and we won't go through this transformation. However, if you realize, and you need someone to tell you that this is possible, which is what we're doing now, we're telling you that this is possible. So now you know. When you realize it's possible to find freedom, when you realize it's really possible to find what everyone is looking for, and you make a choice to go for it, then the trajectory of your life totally changes. Do it like this. You go from being anxious, plodding along, feeling anxious, ups and downs. The trajectory of your life can change if you want it to. And you can move into a direction of such goodness. You can do this. You can do this. If we can do it, anybody can. We're just two normal lads. Grew up Sean playing football, me playing rugby, getting pissed every weekend, trying to find our way in the world. What the hell is this? Going to university, getting drunk, trying to just like cope and chat to girls, and it all just not working and going wrong. If two clumsy guys like us can do it, anyone can. You know, you don't have to be some enlightened Buddha in India. You don't have to be like some special person. We can all go through this transformation. And I'm telling you now, you have the choice. Now you have the choice. So this is our invitation to you. We're going to have to finish in a moment. This is our invitation to you. Join us. Join us in overcoming your anxiety, in overcoming your fear. Join us in finding that childlike nature that you have inside, that childlike goodness and joy that you have inside. This is what we want for you. And it just means so much to us that you've come on this call, that you're seeking out a way to find freedom. And thank you so much, everybody, for your questions. Thank you for being here. I hope that this has given you hope, and I hope that this has given you a few little strategies, and I hope that this has given you some light at the end of the tunnel. Please know you could be looking back at this day in a few years' time and thinking, oh my God, I can't believe how much I've changed. I can't believe how much happier I am now. I can't believe how much more at peace I am now. And no one's going to do this for you. You have to do it yourself. We can help you. We can help you by telling you what has worked for us, by telling you what hasn't worked, so you don't have to necessarily make the mistakes that we made on this bumpy road.
Did you see how peaceful I was there? Pretty peaceful. If you want to be peaceful like me too, there's only one way you can do it. You've got to subscribe to my channel. It's the only way.